We just want to hear from you for a minute. So, come on up. So this is our Oxygen Day, and you guys are part of it. We are going to be announcing an announcement in a little bit about Ven Oxygen, which is our initiative. So now's a good moment because I wanted to catch you guys before you get out and get you on the live stream. Please meet Vassar, Neil Cohen.
Vassar, nice to meet you.
Okay, so this is great. For the audience, we are launching today Ven Oxygen, which has been an intellectual collaboration with the Oxygen Project, but which is technically a separate open source project. Ven, our digital currency, has been running for 15 years, well, almost 15, since 2007, and it's an asset-backed, carbon-linked digital currency. We've discovered over the last several years that there are many ways to create and manage a digital asset. And when we started talking in Kauai this summer, or this spring, February, March, we started talking about like what would proof of oxygen look like in a blockchain-oriented system? And what would oxygen look like if it was expressed in these new digital value layers that are emerging? So we're very happy to announce today that Ven Oxygen is now a thing, and beginning today, it's paying out. And I'm really excited, well, we'll announce it later officially, but our first forest that we'll be earning for Ven Oxygen is a component of the Daintree Forest in Australia, the world's oldest rainforest. Will become the first forest to begin earning Vo2. For Vo2 to be successful, it needs to be open source, and it needs to be accessible, and it really needs to be on the blockchain. However, current blockchains don't work for our ambitions and our values. Not that I don't love Bitcoin or Ethereum, because I do, and we've been successful with various investments in these areas. But we needed a different kind of blockchain for the integrity of Vo2 and Ven to exist in the blockchain system. So we have built gateways to Ethereum and to other things, but we haven't done very much. And I'm really pleased to introduce our friends from Chia, which is a new Generation 3 blockchain, which will be the blockchain for Vo2. And we're building that now. Initial staking and execution of Vo2 happens on the Ultra standard via our asset tokenization system. And we are building a gateway right now to Chia. But the question is, what is Chia? So I'm going to hand it to you guys to talk about why Chia is the right environmental choice for Vo2.
Thank you, Stan.
Give us your name. And
Hi, this is Neil Cohn. I'm the VP of Markets and Sustainability, and I've been coming to COP since 1997 in Kyoto. I was dedicated. I came out of commodities trading. I really saw the need to take market forces and to harness them to solve our environmental problems, especially the climate. At that time, what was called global warming eventually became the climate change issue, and now we are truly in a climate crisis. Our Earth is burning. We're on fire. And I spent the last several years looking for the way to take what we did in Carbon 1.0, which was phenomenal but limited because we could only go after huge projects. We could only use the human manual resources we had available. They were flawed. As we watched AI come through, as we watched blockchain come up to a level where it was real, it was really exciting. It's like, how can we now use these tools to move forward? So I found, at that point, I found Gene Hoffman, our CEO, and I found Bram Cohen. And I'm like, wow, Bram Cohen did Mojo Nation. So maybe a little bit before yours, but did not continue with it. So you are still the longest standing with Ven digital currency. Yeah. But Bram saw the need for this, saw the need for a digital currency. And when he saw Bitcoin, part of it, Bram is, these are the cypherpunks. These are the guys that move things forward. But at that time, they saw that, the use of energy as the wasted resource to validate. That didn't jive with anyone. It wasn't even, it was just, any advancement in technology should be an advancement in environment. If it doesn't match, something's off. Someone didn't work hard enough to get that right. And all of the elegance and all of the beauty of Bitcoin was flawed. And even all of the brilliance of moving programming in that Ethereum did, it missed the point. It was trying to be so accessible that it ended up sacrificing on security. It ended up sacrificing on the basic needs of a digital currency and digital adjunct currencies. So where we are, Bram went and said, hey, I can do this better. It's a challenge. He loves puzzles. And he went out and he got together his group of brilliant mathematicians, cryptographers, crazy people like Gene. And they said, we're going to do this better. And they did. And it took them 4 years when I met them, almost 5 years now, to come up with Chia. Gene Hoffman, I'm going to let you take this over.
Yeah, absolutely. So Gene Hoffman, COO and president of Chia. I kind of run the business for Bram. Bram and I have been dear friends for quite a while. We were both cypherpunks in the 90s. Something Neil said on a panel, I believe yesterday, actually, I think is one of the key things here, is that it wasn't just making something less bad. It was starting from first principles and going from the ground up what would be much better. Bram and I both didn't want to have the adoption of programmable internet money use 20% of the world's baseband power. This was not an acceptable outcome for cryptography. And Bram pulled it off, literally invented math, 3 new types of math, to create a more secure blockchain that does not have the security weaknesses that proof of stake has, does not use the electricity that proof of work does. And I've recently been kind of talking about how big this is in terms of Hoover dams. You know, it's literally like Bitcoin is 28 Hoover dams. It's a lot of annual power usage. It's the Netherlands. The current size of the entire Chia blockchain is about 6% of a Hoover dam, and that's globally. And it has the level of security that Bitcoin already has. So we've got a sustainable and secure blockchain that enables us to unlock these hard coordination problems. You know, when you think about what blockchains really do well, is it lets nations and peers come together. No single person is the system administrator, but it also can build a $1 trillion, $1 billion market that is fully tradable globally, crosses borders, and starts to become a unified market. And that's fundamentally what we need to get to.
I just want to add one more thing. It's really, I'm going to say it's...
I'm going to go to the Vo2 screen. Can you go to the Vo2 screen to the AV site and go ahead?
Yeah. So, I mean, the goal of Vo2, the goal of Chia, and we just want to be the rails for wonderful initiatives like Vo2, it's to flip what cryptocurrency has been, what blockchain is, flip it on its head. It has become, unfortunately, a way to waste, I would say, resources, but it's actually sources, as Bill McDonough would say. It's not even recycled sources. We're wasting energy, even if it's renewable energy that could be used elsewhere. It's not the right thing to do. And we are taking it from this concentration of wealth to truly inclusive prosperity, to the ability to achieve climate initiatives, the ambition we need to achieve what we're talking. This COP is truly about climate ambition, and taking it to the climate ambition and taking it to the ability to recognize all of the sustainable goals that we're trying to achieve, to make sure that we have a currency that can go all the way down to the unbanked, to those that have not even a smartphone, but have the ability then to go and participate in the global markets. So we're all here. Look, we've all been in great startups. We've all achieved what we needed to do for our lives personally. This is our chance to give back and collaborate. Chia is all about collaboration. I'll say Carbon 1.0 was a bit of competition. We were all new. This is us. The only thing we're doing is competing against the dark side. We are the light side. We are collaboration. We are with you. We are with all of the other blockchains. Come and work with us.
So I think it's important to geek out for a second. Vassar and I were lucky enough to enjoy crypto class in Kauai during a good chunk of the pandemic. I helped you get Shiba Inu, which I think has done very well since our acquisition. But the question I'd like to ask you guys, and I'm going to take this to Gene, is the database. So really blockchains are databases, and they're ways, for those of us who don't know, They're ways of sharing information across databases in a secure and reliable way that is immutable. But your database is special. It does something that other databases can't do. So can you just explain that in kind of simple terms?
Yeah, we call it data layer. And so the idea is that you have a bunch of databases that are near the blockchain. And they're making atomic updates. So in other words, they're saying, hey, I'm going to change this set of data in my database. And it might be a shapefile, pictures of trees, a PDF of the contract. That doesn't actually go on chain, but the hash of that goes on chain and is signed in. And anyone else who's participating in that kind of nearline database knows, oh, there's been an update. Let me go get that update. Let me verify that it matches what is on chain. Okay, this is the new state of the near blockchain database. And this fundamentally kind of breaks the public-private blockchain dilemma. You know, you can have all the things you were looking for or were worried about respected in a private blockchain without having to have someone be the system administrator. Everyone's actually appear in the group that you're working with these kind of federated databases together. Now, you know, what we're launching with you is actually even more native to the chain than that. It's our new Chia asset tokens. This is like ERC20, but to say it's like ERC20 is to call a ticket something like a computer, right? These are very different things. We're really excited. You guys are going to be one of the very first Chia asset tokens on chain. And these are native things to the chain. So for example, people can come, soon we're going to have things like wrapped Bitcoin and wrapped Ethereum, all of a sudden not using so much power.
Offset.
Offset, but even when on chain, it's now not, you know, continuing to use that as pieces, which we love.
The thing too is Vo2 on chain, whether it's on Lightning or whether it's on Chia, would be a theoretical climate offset for Bitcoin. So together, we
That's
can
right.
turn Bitcoin net positive.
Well, and one of the neat things about our chain is people can say, hey, I want Vo2. So I'm going to create a transaction that creates Vo2. I don't have it yet. So this is an invalid transaction, but I'll spend stablecoin, Chia to buy it. And all you have to do is communicate that to anybody who's got your coin, yourselves. And then you can go, yeah, I'll accept that offer. I'll sign it. The signatures merge. You put it on chain, and it works. And what's so cool about that is neither side can cheat. But you can absolutely have kind of immediate over-the-counter trading of any of these assets.
So is this a little bit like a DeFi?
It is. It's a DeFi core.
DeFi?
We'll stick with decentralized finance. We're fine with that concept. No, it's you know, Bram loves puzzles and markets, right? And so the goal here is to really create a market of markets.
And should we just clarify this again? Bram created BitTorrent.
Bram is the guy who built BitTorrent, used half the internet at night, that guy.
So he's got some credibility.
Yes, there are very few people who get to roll their own cryptography. He's one of the people who calls up folks like Dan Benet and Chris Stockpiacek at IST Austria and goes, I know this will work, can you go prove it for me? And they do.
So, can I also, I was talking about offsetting. My goal, yes, there are things now that need to be offset. We are really all about intrinsically green from the start. Our goal is to focus on climate action, on achievement, on reaching true goals, on intrinsic efforts, which is what we're doing. Don't do emissions to offset those emissions. Don't create NFTs that are, oh my God,
Right.
exactly. Go start from the beginning with intention, as our friend Bill McDonough says. Do good from the start. And that's all about, and you're hearing Greta and everyone go and say go against offsets. I understand where that comes from. What we're trying to do is give everybody the ability to promote and create good and support good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you can also give an offset capability, that's also, you know, it's not the top priority, but it's still better than nothing.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's an extra.
And it's important, you know, Neil has been a real guider of this for us. And, you know, with Mr. McDonough, we recently announced that we've gotten all the hard drive manufacturers to start extending the lifetime of hard drives. So instead of the average hard drive being a 4-year life, we're talking about extending it to 7 or 8 as a Chia farm. You know, if your drives start to fail, that's okay. And then we're adding recycling. So now you're going to be able to send drives back to Western Digital and Seagate. And so all of a sudden, we've completely lowered the global storage e-waste footprint, not just the Chia e-waste footprint, right? And so that's exactly the kind of thing we're trying to do to be actually authentically better, not, you know, the things that other people do of saying, well, I'm going to put my Bitcoin mine on some place to use some power, but of course I'm really keeping it all the time, don't ask. Right? That's not what
There
we're
is
doing.
a very big movement to Bitcoin's credit. there is a very big movement. The Griffin, other groups who are doing solar energy mining, 100% renewable mining, that is part of the solution for that. And you could argue that some elements of these things are driving renewable adoption up the supply curve. But what you guys are doing is fundamentally different because you use a fraction of the power to begin with. Is that right?
You start with 1/300th of the power for the same security.
And with a much more robust and diverse database behind it.
And also more inclusive. I mean, actual real people can, in their home, farm chia, right? You know, there are 400,000 farming nodes in the world right now. Nigerians were using this as a currency to bid on developers at a tech shop. And people are like, why are we doing that? And they're like, well, the Antminer 19 is expensive. We're not going to get it for 6 months. Our power sucks and it's expensive. But I've got hard drives laying around and old equipment that I was probably going to throw away. I turned it on, I farmed, and now we have chia. So it's all of a sudden, you know, you can have a competitive farm under your television set in your house. Do not ask what the Ethereum or Bitcoin equivalent looks like. It's not fun.
As Gene was just saying, yesterday we were there with representatives in Africa, and I'll go a little further into this. They are so thrilled that a Raspberry Pi, a $70 computer, gets you on as a validator on Chia. If you want to validate Ethereum, what is it, $120,000?
It's a really expensive machine.
Just to stake. And
That's
then,
right.
then even if, wait, that's when we get to proof of stake.
That's right. Before that, you already have to have a really powerful computer and a GPU you can't buy.
So the real issues, and I'm going to go back, and I'm sorry, it's not going to be popular.
Be careful, there's a Bitcoin army.
I know there's a Bitcoin army, and let them take me on. Because frankly, I feel Bitcoin has a lot of beauty, and it's not going away. I'm happier they're using renewable energy, but frankly, that energy would be used elsewhere. I've yet to see real projects that are being developed, because I'll tell you that
As long as we have oil, gas, and coal in the system, there's more demand room for solar.
Yeah, but there's also a good transference from one to the other. I have guys coming to me saying, I'm using all of this hydropower in BC. I work with the BC government. There is no more hydro in BC. It's used up. They've used their resources. This is, first of all, big hydro. Second of all, they've reached a point where they have to use gas at times because they don't have any more hydro resources. So what does that mean? That means it's just a transference. We're just kind of we're playing a shell game. So I want real action. I don't want to see, games and switching around. I'm about, if you feel it in your gut that it's right, do a gut check every single time. Let's all do a gut check on what we're doing, and we'll start to do the right thing. We all know what's moving the world forward, and I think that's what we're about. We're about, like, be straightforward with yourself, be straightforward with our planet. I'm going to say one thing here that is a little bit weird, but I kind of get into this now. We all know what the Genesis block was, right? You have the Genesis block. I'm going to compare that to the Genesis of Mother Earth. Okay, as we go through these generations and changes and these new blocks, we're all validators. And we all need to validate by the truth that we know Mother Earth is. And we all know it. We feel it. We know it's true. Okay, so we all know what is the truth. How do I need this to move forward? How does this move forward to our achievement? Okay, we need an inclusive economy. We need to transfer. We need to see this transition. We all see right now the giant repricing all across our economy is happening now. Mark Carney and the great economists see this. But it needs to happen in a way that is intrinsically correct, true, and with an ethos that is genuine. Not just taking a system that was around and painting it green. So I'm sorry, but...
Well, and I want to add one thing to somewhat interesting point there.
Can I get in a question real quick?
Absolutely.
No, I don't need to talk. Me and Vass are going to be talking for the next 3 hours. And I do think this is like Crypto Class Live. So for those of you in Kauai and Mexico and Ibiza who've been at Crypto Class last year, you're in Crypto Class Live. But I want to ask you, Gene, real quick. Can you tell us about a couple of the partners that you're working with? Are you guys allowed to talk about it yet?
We are.
Okay. So can I hear about WB and CR?
I can talk about one of those. I can't talk about both of those just yet. Later today, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You are seconds ahead of our ability to talk about the latter. We are building a prototype version of the next version of the climate warehouse for the World Bank. We believe our technology is the only technology that can meet the actual requirements that are necessary to have a secure, distributed database, which is what these are, that is intrinsically sustainable and is inclusive. You know, normal folks from normal places, non-OECD countries, they can play. And those are a lot of the pieces that were necessary. And you know, look, the security is real. We can't go out there and start to try to build a global carbon credit market and then find out that like it double spends. Like, no, that can't happen, right? And you know, and that's one of the harder things for people to kind of get their heads around. That you know, there's a lot of showy technology right now in the cryptocurrency space, and it looks great. But like proof of stake, everybody's like, proof of stake is great, and I simply ask two questions. Well, it's great, except it's not decentralized, nor is it secure. And that's a fundamental fact.
Well, and it also costs $70 to make a transaction.
That's correct.
So if you're buying a $5 carbon credit on a chain that costs $70, this is the other reason why then it hasn't been on.
See $10 floor credits. Come on.
Yeah,
Let's not do that.
$90 for it, but you know, okay, fair enough.
Right. I mean, look, you know, and with
Whatever the price, if you spend
No,
$70 to make the transaction, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I just also want to. I want to see carbon be equitable, and we're working on that as well. By the
What do
way.
you think is the right price for carbon?
Okay, so there is no one carbon, right?
No.
And
There is one oxygen though.
yes, amen. So carbon, God, I could go into this for too long, but there are even.
I think Vassar's got to get a word in her.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Go geek out of this, and then.
I don't want to geek out too much, but
Crypto class now.
yeah, we're currently working with another multilateral development bank to create what we hope will be benchmarks that will really help differentiate carbon, because there's too many varieties of carbon and there's no clarity, and the lack of transparency hurts liquidity and hurts the ability, not just liquidity, hurts the ability for somebody in Ecuador or in Bangladesh to go and do a project because they don't even know what the value is going to be. And it's too hard. When I create a market and it's obvious and the financial institutions understand what's going to be coming out of that, I can go and I could pre-sell, I can borrow, I can, you know, and I can create the facilities we can create. The private market could step in, and in a public-private, 4P, right? Public-private partnership with people. Let's get us all involved to make this work. And that's what's awesome.
And this comes all the way back around to this comes from the top. You know, Bram wants to design real markets that will actually do what we all want those markets to do. And this goes right to Bram's kind of core thesis statement that markets and superior technology are how you start to solve these problems.
Okay, I have a question. So no, you guys are fine. This is part of crypto class. I'm the student. You guys are y'all are the teachers today. Stan's normally our teacher. So I want to talk about incentives, and especially with what you guys are doing in Stan 2, I think this relates to Vo2, is how do you incentivize countries, like the stakeholders at COP, especially in what you guys are doing in the crypto space, and especially with the carbon space and carbon offsets. How do you use this mechanism to incentivize countries and even companies to make bigger commitments faster?
Okay, I've been doing this since '97. Kyoto Protocol had developing world countries and had developing countries and least developed countries. Some countries had commitments, other countries were beneficiaries of the clean development mechanism and the AI. What we have done in the Paris Agreement, there are no bystanders, there are no charity cases. We are all countries and thousands of companies have NDCs, right? They're nationally designated commitments or their corporate commitments and individual personal commitments. My family is committed to go climate neutral, I don't know, by 2025, we'll try. But that's the truth, honestly, is that we are all players. And we need to change the dynamic. I've heard this yesterday, and it was so frustrating to me as other parties were saying, of course we're letting them participate. We're going to do our projects there. We need to give these countries the ability to stand up on an even stage with us. We need to get there where I have Central American, Latin American, African countries, Southern Asian countries that are the global South needs to be at the table with the global North. We are giving them the tools to do just that. We are enabling them to have the infrastructure. Actually, one of the things of the Circular Drive initiative that William McDonough is chairing and bringing forward, we're taking these used hard drives. We are now working with, it's going to be announced soon, but with 2 major organizations to build hubs, digital data hubs in developing world countries that need the digital infrastructure to lift themselves into our economy. And in these hubs, using drives that were taken out of other drives but refurbished, we're also going to have extra capacity, extra Chia capacity to be able to actually make those data centers sustainable, to provide revenues to them.
So this is a circular economy data center.
In every way, in every way. It's all circular. We're bringing them around, the circle's moving. What used to be down, Africa was difficult, Africa's going to rise. These continents need to be up there. They had the resources forever. They were being kept down artificially. This enables inclusion.
And I want to echo that because it's not just credits, right? Credits is where we're starting because there's excellent regulatory reasons for it. It's a market that's needed. It needs to be cross-border. It needs to be international from the start. It needs to be permissionless. I mean, the greatest thing about the Chia blockchain is you can go do something on it we don't like, and we cannot stop you. That's the point. Now, we're here also, though, and this is an important point to your question. There's a running joke in software that no one got fired for buying originally IBM, then it became Microsoft. Right now, adopting a blockchain for real is a scary concept. And so we're here to make it a much less scary concept. You know, we are a bunch of multiple exit, serious entrepreneurs who've done this before, know the technology, and can make sure that as the real stakeholders start to adopt these technologies, the risk is low. But what's exciting about it is, and I've started to use this analogy when I talk to folks in finance and other places, in the same way that, you know, Africa skipped the plain telephone line system and went straight to wireless. I actually believe we're going to be able to enable the entirety of the financial sophistication that we have in the OECD countries to become something you access from your smartphone in the global South, in Africa. You know, and in fact, look, you know, we think that in fact blockchains are going to be adopted outside of the OECD far faster than inside the OECD.
Well, I mean, look at El Salvador. I mean, I went to El Salvador for the launch of Bitcoin as a national currency there, and within 4 weeks, Chivo, which is the Bitcoin wallet app running on Lightning, had 500,000 out of 6 million people in the country on it, in a country that's 70% unbanked. Today, Chivo is larger than all the banks combined in El Salvador. And it's actually brought financial inclusion in a matter of 6 to 8 weeks to over 30% of the country. I mean, that's incredible. So you can just imagine, like, from now until next COP27, there's going to be a transformation in people's ability to access endpoint financial systems. And if that endpoint financial system isn't consistent with the climate agenda, we're just going to be making the problem that much worse. That's one of the reasons why I'm actually excited about what you guys are doing with Chia. I want to ask you guys another question. Actually, no, crypto class. Do you have another question?
What about the audience?
Audience?
We
What a
did
great
say-
idea. Yeah. Welcome to Crypto Class, live from Glasgow.
You guys are our newest members.
Yeah.
Any questions? We did catch people at lunchtime.
Gabe
so-
has a question. Come stand up here.
Hi there. I'm just a filmmaker. I'm quite insignificant, but
Nobody's insignificant.
I've been following Chia since about April when it stirred a bit of controversy. And I just want you to let us know, for the people who don't actually know. Oh my God, I'm so nervous. Sorry. Just for the people who don't actually know, why is it more environmentally friendly to store crypto on a hardware space, even though it provoked a lot of controversy within the mining? I mean, you're talking now about seabed mining. So why is it more important to do that with that method instead of using a lot of energy to mine crypto and bring it into existence in that way?
So you have to use some resource, otherwise you don't have security. So there's no free lunch. A lot of people are out there kind of trying to tell you that there's a free lunch available with proof of stake. They're trying to say we're going to use money as that resource. I ask a lot of people about proof of stake if they know who George Soros is and why he's famous, and most of them do not know, and that's because he literally broke the British pound. So if you're using money to defend your security, you're already in a scary situation. More to your question, it turns out
Speculators will eventually scavenge
your proof of stake coin. That's right. It turns out that there is a tremendous amount of over-allocated hard drive space in the natural market already. It's a $60 billion annual market. People buy storage expecting to use it in the next year or two. And so for that first year, you've got a bunch of storage sitting there dormant that's already on. So the net incremental cost to the world of farming that space is actually positive. You're taking that space that was otherwise idle and putting it in and having it actually do something valuable. And then as you need it back, you just delete your farm. And that's one of the things we love about storage is, if it's not interesting to farm, it has other uses. The point of it is those other uses. Then also what's happening is that there's now being built, and we're more formalizing this, a used storage market. Unfortunately, most hard drives get pulled out of big data centers in year 4 and get shredded. We're stopping that. So we're going to take those drives and we're going to get them in farmer hands, and those farmers are going to get another 4 years of life. 75% of those drives will go on for 4 more years. 25% will die. This is why they come out. Facebook can't lose your pictures, right? But as a farmer, you lose a little of your farm, you don't care. You send it back and you recycle it now. So we love storage because it is over-allocated that way. It is very secure. You cannot go and 51% attack the Chia chain easily, even if you're a nation state. And that's the kind of security we have to have for governments to trust the decentralized nature and the secure nature. It's not going back to the United States is in control again. It's the United States is an equivalent actor on that blockchain using this resource that is massively over-allocated. IDC put out a research report. They were so excited when this launched because they're like, we've been trying to explain to people how much unused space there is. And basically the TLDR was, Bram's right, there's a lot of unused space. Bram's wrong, it's even bigger than he thinks it is. So we're excited to be able to, to turn that into something valuable, create new uses for it, help it underpin a carbon credit market, in the future, crop markets, equities, debt, green bonds. It's the entire package of financial infrastructure that we think we can give to everybody, permissionless, accessible to all.
I think it's the headline here, as I understand it from my conversations with Neil, is that Bitcoin is proof of work, mining. Ethereum is proof of work, mining, that wants to be proof of stake, money. Van is centrally issued, no proof except for the audit. Vo2 is proof of oxygen because you have to stake oxygen against a shared mapping system, so we layer that proof. And then we're going to run it on Chia, which is proof of time and space. And so one of the most interesting things I find about this, which isn't clear from, I don't know, it's not clear until you say it, and then it's very clear, is that proof of time and space isn't one thing. It's 2 things. So what's really cool about Chia is that you have 2 consensus tasks that connect to each other. And this is also part of what makes Chia so efficient. So can you talk about proof of time? I could do it. Or proof of space. And proof of space. But I don't want to say it wrong.
No, you said it fine. I do want to say that proof of space is the star of the show.
And that's all those old storage drives.
You've put your bingo cards on your hard drives. You win a block based on your number of bingo cards compared to the whole world's number of bingo cards.
On
right?
a Raspberry Pi.
Right. You take a
Can I do it on my
Western
phone?
Digital disc and you plug it into a Raspberry Pi and it works.
Can I do it on my 2014 Samsung?
Oh, it'd be great. We see people farm on slightly older Android devices already, right? I mean, it's that kind of thing.
Because, I mean, okay, so got it. So space on my phone or my Raspberry Pi or my old like HP data center sitting in like Calcutta, okay. But the time thing is interesting.
So proof of time is there to solve some really nasty security attacks. It causes you to, as a farmer, for example, you have to go, hey, I think I've got a winning reward. I'm not going to hold that reward back because if I didn't have proof of time kind of driving me to submit it, I could wait and go, maybe if I give a slightly different one, I'll get a better outcome for my farm later, right? It's things like selfish mining, nothing at stake. It gets Chia up to 51% attack security, just like Bitcoin. One of the hidden secrets of a lot of these proof of stake chains is they're not 51% safe. They're only 33% safe. So like literally 34% of the network and you're over, it's done, stop the net. So proof of time is the bingo card caller. So if I said, you're going to put your bingo cards down and you're going to write them out, the proof of time, the output of the proof of time is literally the number called for bingo. And so you go look at your hard drive and you go, how close is one of my proofs to that number that the proof of time created? There are only a few proof of time servers. You need like a handful. So, we run a couple. There are private pools that run a couple. These are machines that are doing something that looks like proof of work. They're sitting there proving time. And so, they're relatively heavy, but like I have 3 modern gaming computers sitting in my office that is one of the proof of time servers. They run at about like 20% load. So it's not, again, even the Bitcoin kind of mining, but it is taking the absolute fastest single core and going, that's the clock. That's the speed at which we're going to, create wall clock time in the blockchain.
It's timestamp.
Do we have a crypto class question? Crypto class question. Lucien, you've got to have a question. I know you're eating, but here's...
It's not as much about a crypto class question as my ears perk up when you guys say you are being circular. Who are you partnering with to recycle?
Bill McDonough, Seagate Western
nice.
Digital. We'll be announcing a lot of the data center players here as well, because this is broader than just Chia. This is us actually getting the entire storage business and the hyperscale data centers. So I guess it's Mang now and not Fang anymore. But all of those folks absolutely were out there shredding drives, and they don't want to do that anymore. And so this is the catalyst to bring full circularity to the global data center business, right?
It's a downstream business model for old data centers.
That's right. You're improving the outcomes for them. And that's one of the things we love about storage, right? If we were wrong, and I don't think we are, but if we were wrong, we caused storage to get a little bigger. In other words, people were buying new storage to farm Chia. The actual impact is it would drive down the cost, both in dollars and watts, of your future iPhone storage. So everybody gets the benefit if that happens. Where the Antminer 19 race, no, the Antminer 19 is useless. It's a space eater, right? You can't go repurpose it. There's no market for an Antminer 19 except to mine Bitcoin. But there's a market for everybody for storage. Like Facebook would love it if we come up with, because of that out of demand, a write a couple times, read forever. I mean, this is your photo archive, right? So you've got this massive global demand for all of these storage use cases that Chia intentionally is designed to match. Because otherwise, we're creating a world where the Internet Archive has an even easier job doing what they do, right? That's exciting, right? Because the externalities are positive, not negative. This can make the storage of data on the internet cheaper, both in power terms and in dollar terms.
I think it's really interesting. First of all, having the ability for even part of your storage to be farming Chia creates that revenue stream, which supports the rest of it. The initiatives that we're going to be announcing, and they're not quite ready yet, but that we're working with all of these organizations in the developing world to create these digital hubs that are necessary to enable the global south to rise up, is a big part of what we're doing. It makes us no money. Most of what Chia does makes us no money. The blockchain, it's owned, not by us. Every patent that we're doing, and I don't see him, but Ken Griggs, I'm gonna give him some kudos here.
One of our patents.
And Bram had created this new data layer that really changing the way blockchain can work. It takes data from being a nice, beautiful Christmas ornament on the blockchain tree to being part of it and usable. It's amazing. But I think what's really interesting is how this enables so much. It really expands the whole market for what blockchain can do. And I absolutely just...
Can we put data on this chain? Because we're working on an open source climate data hub.
Yes.
That is part of what we're doing. And with OS Climate, we're looking at how to take all of this tremendous data, so much data, and have it accessible on change so it's immutable, accessible easily, and not cost, and also I think we didn't even talk about the UTXO model versus the account model, and why we're going to work so much better on our Lightning layer, which is already in development. So right now our fees are extremely low, extremely low. I think it's like small amount because
There's
it's a test.
literally zero right now.
Yes, but we want them to be a little bit so we can't get attacked by.
So we have a minimum fee that if you
Right.
choose it, it considers anything less than that zero.
Right.
But if you choose that minimum fee, you will now be prioritized.
Exactly.
That's, again, markets, like fee markets work to, well, on correctly built blockchains, fee markets work. I know some people have dealt with gas, and it's not been a well-architected market, to be clear. And this goes to the account versus...
Credit for being inventive.
Yes, no, absolutely. It was an attempt to solve interesting problems. I mean, Bitcoin doesn't have this layer because 11 years ago, you didn't even know what this should look like, right? So, absolute credit to the Solidity folks for saying, yes, let's go try to do something. Let's make it accessible. That unfortunately, though, was also its downfall because it was too accessible.
And we should give credit to the World Bank.
Not accessible, but it has added $1 trillion to the crypto markets, and you can't underestimate the impact that both Bitcoin and Ethereum have had.
Yeah, and look, there are two types of Bitcoin people, okay? There are the people who are actually interested in the technology, and those are friends of ours. And we think that ultimately there's an opportunity that these two chains are actually a path forward for both. Bitcoin, the monetary instrument, isn't necessarily Bitcoin, the proof of work chain. So ultimately, there's an interesting question about whether in a future you actually spend your Bitcoin on the Chia chain as a Chia asset token. Right.
So I think that blockchains are life forms, and assets are blood, digital blood that circulates on these life forms. And I think as we move towards singularity, comprehensive AI, robotics that are mesh, eventually these will be seen as early life forms. So, you have to give credit to Bitcoin and Ethereum for being what they are. I mean, Bitcoin is an AI that eats energy.
Well, hang on. Bitcoin didn't mean to be that.
No,
let me actually say.
but it is.
But Bitcoin is this amazing discovery. Like the words secure distributed database should not fit in a sentence, right? But it does. And Satoshi did not mean for it to consume this much power. He came from a software developer's background. And from his perspective, let's take all of the CPU cycles that are literally laying around here. There's a laptop there, somebody's got a pad there. They're doing nothing right now. It'd be great if in the background they were validating transactions. However, it turns out that when you're doing a simple math algorithm, it's much easier to do it in custom hardware. And so that's the downfall, the one downfall for Bitcoin. Otherwise, proof of work in many ways was created to solve problems that proof of stake still has. So, we often say that we're the first new Nakamoto consensus because we're the first blockchain to take Bitcoin and say, how can we get back to the spirit of what Satoshi wanted to do around validation? And that was where Bram had to invent new math to be able to prove space as unused space.
The spirit of Satoshi.
I don't have a question. I'm just learning a lot. Adam walked into the room and so did Dolma, but Dolma is focusing on something very important and Adam's eating lunch. But maybe one of you two have a question.
And also, Dolma's going to come up later.
Oh, here we go.
Some good stuff.
You can come sit on stage.
Welcome.
Thank you. I've been following Chia, so great to see you here. And you wanted me up here for a moment to ask the question. So I'm super interested in when the proof of time and proof of space, do you think that mechanism could be used for, we've been developing this kind of narrative of asset class called futures, where we could tie financial incentives to particular future outcomes. And along the way, there's obviously going to be a huge amount of time invested to deliver on that future outcome. And I'm wondering if we, sovereign wealth funds, et cetera, we need to transition, the SDGs have been predicted to cost $60 trillion. And we're nowhere near that spending. So is there a way of using the proof of time mechanism to drip feed the funding to the delivery of particular future outcomes?
So that's actually something that's kind of core to good blockchains. I mean, in many ways, blockchains are, people call them secure distributed databases. They're also clocks. In fact, that's what they're really, really good at, is telling time. Now, they don't tell time down to the second. They tell time down to about a minute. But over years, that's more than accurate for what you're currently talking about. Chia Lisp, which is our new on-chain programming environment, allows you to do these kinds of things with, create an asset, which is one of these, and you create an asset per. Because, an asset's a generic term here, right? Don't necessarily assume it means that everything's an asset. Sometimes it's, a loyalty point, or it is an internal tracking mechanism used in a bank between its own branches, so it's not really even sold to a third party. What you can do, though, is you can have it be programmatic that those things will be paid out. So you literally put the funds on chain, and those funds would then go to the addresses that you specified, 13 years in the future. That's in some ways the entire point of a blockchain, is to have those time locks and the automated activity thereafter. Neil's recruiting for the panel. Ah, yes.
Circle Drive, that's Chia and Hub. Can you come over just on crypto? I think it's amazing that you're not part of this. And we're talking about how in the Circular Drive, like what we're doing to take these drives now, because we're going to be working with S3 and with the Atlanta to take them to Africa, to take them to countries, to not just to create data centers that are using Chia, part of it to create revenue to support these drives. If you have, I was in Costa Rica. Hopefully the minister's coming, but she's signing, and then maybe for Costa Rica
Followed by the afternoon with Lucian on something called the Up Game, which is looking at these futures. But this idea of SDG futures, of outcome futures that we want to create on chain is kind of interesting.
I can say that there's so much brilliance coming to a kind of crescendo point here. Whereas if we can, if we now have the capacity to say, okay, this is how much this particular narrative of the future is going to cost. So we can actually start investing in stories rather than companies, and we can tie financial incentives to stories and say, okay, there might be 1,000 companies that need to collaborate, or 1,000 different stakeholder organizations that need to collaborate to deliver on that narrative. How do we make sure that all of them are getting rewarded for their contribution on that delivery? That's the.
So are you saying that we could DAO a story?
Yes.
So we DAO poverty?
Yes. Quite right. So we see the Up Game as essentially an ecosystem of DAOs, where this is, I think, what Bucky was getting at with the New World Game. If we can gamify every aspect of the transformation of our society, we can align financial incentives to the delivery of those narratives, and that would give us the ability to actually have a financial incentive for cooperation to outperform competition. Because the fundamental nature of like venture capital, for example, like so many ways we're currently investing capital, is it actually has a byproduct of incentivizing competition. Just take how we might tackle, say, cancer research. There's like thousands of companies, thousands of not-for-profits, all incentivize actually not to share information, not to share data, not to share, because that's their competitive advantage in their IP. So what if we were to change that, and the future would be like, okay, we need to deliver this particular narrative, and any organizations that's contributing to that could get paid based on milestones and track records, so the amount you can unlock increases based on your track record. And that, to me, is like how we might gamify the creation of the future.
Yeah, and I want to be explicit. I mean, we have started this kind of self-organizing ecosystem that will run on. And, we joke that, if Bram and I get hit by a bus, the Chia blockchain will continue to move forward. But we're tool makers. Fundamentally, what we're doing is building a set of tools that we're asking the world to go be creative with. We're certainly here to help you think through how to do that, because it's so early that it's, often daunting, right? But when you have an idea that works, making it work securely, sustainably on chain is exactly the ethos behind Chia. And so it is permissionless that way, right? It is, enabling your creativity, not ours.
So someone very special just joined us on the stage. This is Bill McKibben. McDonough, sorry, that's my fault. Bill McDonough, I blew your introduction. Bill McDonough, and he wrote Cradle to Cradle. So please join us on the stage. And yes, the father of circularity, which has been the theme all day long. All week long, but for our specific conversation, it's tied in throughout our time. So thank you for joining us.
Okay. Yeah. What excites me right now, just even looking at what's going on over in the Blue Zone and elsewhere, is that we're getting set for next COP. That's how I see it. We're just getting ready. And it's so great to see the people who have come here to discuss the issues of our day that aren't in the COP, for example, because we're here in solidarity with the COP, but we're not caught up in what happens in the COP. And I think the issue of the negotiators and everybody sort of dancing around, we just heard it here. It's time for us all to connect and collaborate. And I think one of the great things about what Chia is doing, for example, is the notion of tools, that we look at tools. And what we're seeing here now is that the tools that we have evolved into something that is using the wrong source of power to run the tools. And in the history of the making of things, we call it, guess what? Manufacturing. Well, that comes from the word hand and making. So it was weaving, it was laying brick, it was knotting for rugs and things like that, things made by hand. And then we go into the first industrial revolution, and what do we call it? Manufacturing, but we're using machines. It could have been called machine factoring. And then we move on to 3D machines, and we have robot factoring. And now we have AI, and now we have machine learning, and now we have all these other things. So one of the key questions is, how do we put into the machine, the tools, the values that we want to evidence as human beings, as a member of this collection of species even. And so one of the things that excites me is, if we're going to be transactional and we need a language of value that reflects our values, then we have to look clearly at our values and what is good and what is bad. And one of the problems we have right now is that we run the whole system with fossil fuels. That's it. So carbon in the circular economy is both a material, thank goodness, that table you're sitting on, and a fuel. Whoops. So we're not burning aluminum to run the economy. So, but what we are doing is, for example, destroying our access to rare earths and other materials as we run a fossilized economy. So that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about this, because what has been, in my book, discovered here, and I see discoveries as things that appear obvious when you're presented them. The argument is not worth having. It's there. It's obvious. It's obvious that a coin or a transactional device that utilizes our existing technology, then we truly are working with resources instead of sources. What a ridiculous thing to take sources to do something where we have resources waiting around. So that's really a critical moment in time. And I think that I'm working on the future of petroleum for a very large country that works with this. And one of the points is, stop calling these resources. These are sources. And they should be, rest in peace. And we should have resources. We have enough floating around. I mean, the projections on plastics alone are that by 2050, we will never need petroleum for plastics again. There's so much of it out there, right? Well, okay, but what about our electronics? Why aren't we doing an optimization on all our electronics? And it would be done on every level, from a material perspective, to an energy perspective, to a human values perspective, to the idea of being graceful and dignified and sharing. And it's worth remembering that the word competition comes from the Latin competare, which means together and walk. It does not mean kill the other. It was the Greeks, 10 cities, the Decapoli, decimating each other, and then realizing, wait a minute, we're all killing each other. When the Persians show up, we're toast. So they decided to have the Olympics. Everybody gets to do all these things, throw sharp sticks, lift heavy objects, run around in circles. But nobody dies. We all get fit together. See, that's what this is. So for me, the idea that you'd have a single-minded coin that requires proof of work and you're running around burning fossil fuels for whatever, solving some algorithm so you can create some form of scarcity where nothing exists. Like, that's just so ready to be revived and revised with intelligent, graceful things. That's why I like this so much.
Bill, if you have another minute, you know, today's theme, the proof of oxygen, then oxygen, the Oxygen Project. Could you talk in broader terms about oxygen and how you see oxygen in the circular economy? It's probably a weird question for you because we're obviously surrounded by oxygen, but that's our theme today. And I'm just curious, generally, what are your thoughts on the air we breathe?
That's actually two questions, because the air we breathe is not just oxygen.
True.
But the way I look at it, if people think that a pessimist is someone who sees the glass as half empty, and an optimist thinks it's half full, I think it's always full of water and air. So the glasses are full. The question is, what are they full of? And so when we have this anxiety and concern over carbon, which is appropriate, we got to be careful not to demonize the carbon. But at the same time, we also have to remember that we emit carbon in our breath, and we emit carbon in our products. And the fact that we call products have a life cycle, there's all these human projections being put on inanimate objects, which is pretty strange, because they're not alive. So the end of life, how do you tell your children that I'm designing for the end of life? Really? It's not very pleasant. So as we go after the carbon, what a wonderful idea to also look at the oxygen, because remember, it's CO2. So the fact that photosynthesis is actually producing oxygen, not just putting carbon in the soil, it is two things going on. So you can look at both sides of it. They're all one thing. I think that's very exciting. And then when we look at material flows, it's the same thing. Why wouldn't we want to consider the idea, not of regenerative electronics, for example, as we're talking about for the memories, but, you know, I always think it's funny that, you know, aluminum's been associated with Alzheimer's, lest we forget. So, you know, when you think about it, what are we forgetting? And the idea that we lose our memory is so ridiculous. When you think about statistical significance and artificial intelligence, what that is statistical memory, right? And so when we want to look at our memory of our world that we're in, I think we got to remember to breathe. And that's why I think breathing cities, which is what we're working on in China, is about oxygen. So, and cleaning air. So we're looking at how to put geothermal plants in where the coal plants are for district heating, so we can pull out the coal plants and put in renewables and then use the capex of the district heating with free, clean energy. And the thing that's beautiful is that the skies turn blue and the air gets clean and so on. And so I think that we have the same thing going on with our electronics, our material flows. They should be optimized for health and safety and continuation, lest we forget.
Thank you. I know that you guys have to be somewhere else, but hopefully you have a couple of minutes. Can we get Bill up here for one more question? I want to ask you a question about hydrogen, real quick. And if you guys need to go, we'll let you go, but otherwise we'll stay. Quick question. You're one of them, well, okay, you guys can go then. Is Bill going with you? Okay, so real quick, just 2 seconds. I love talking to you because I civics. So I love your mind about chemistry. And I've been wondering a question about hydrogen. So it seems to me that if we're approaching an oxygen problem, because we're one way or another destroying oxygen on the planet, which is not good, but when you split hydrogen, you make water, which we need, and you make oxygen, which we need. Do you think that it's worth thinking more about hydrogen? Or do you think it's just too difficult and expensive to break hydrogen into water and air, and water and oxygen?
I don't think there's any question but that we will do that. Renewable power is so cheap now, it's 1.5 cents a kilowatt hour in the deserts. So we could probably aim for making green hydrogen from renewables directly within maybe 6 years or something. And I think the key to it is going to get the price down below diesel, which I think we can probably do, which would be about $2.40, something like that. But when I look at the steel industry, which is where we're really going to use it big time, they need it at about $1 a kilo. So that's a long way. So I think what we might be doing in the meantime is using hydrocarbons for hydrogen and carbon, rather than burn it as a fuel. So that's called blue hydrogen. That means extract the hydrogen directly with steam reformation and then sequester the carbon. But I don't want to sequester the carbon. I want to use it for graphene and other kinds of cool stuff. So, optimize the carbon. So I think that'll be the transition through to cost-effective hydrogen. But I see the hydrogen being used really mainly for thermal loads and big loads. I think electricity is pretty great for general distribution.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you guys are free to go from crypto class.
Thank you.
Yeah.